It's Wednesday, February the 24th. Sorry about no fishing report last week. I was actually down in Florida fishing. This is kind of my time of the year to get all my playing done. Looks like I'm going to have to start to get back to work here. But the lake level's still about the same. You know, it's been the same for about the last 3 weeks, within a couple inches, about 914 and a half. Water temperature still, you know, in the mid 40s to high 40s. I hadn't been out, like I said, last week and a half I've been in Florida. But the guys I've been talking to, you know, say they're biting pretty good one day and not the next, which is kind of common. You know, when the water's that cold, these fish don't eat every day. You know, their metabolism's pretty slow. But it sounds like a lot of the bites the same as it was before I took off. There's a lot of fish being caught on a crankbait, jerkbait, and Alabama rig. Now, you know, I talked to them. The last fishing report I done was right before I had a tournament. So I guess I'll kind of start off and tell you what I had done in the tournament. I actually found some fish up the upper White River, up around Eagle Rock. You know, the water's a lot clearer up there. And normally in the spring, that's a pretty stable, you know, once you get on to something that's pretty consistent. So I went up there in the middle of the week and, you know, I had about 10 keepers up there on an Alabama rig and a jerkbait. And most of the fish were still pretty shallow. You know, the boat, you know, I never got the boat out of probably 20, 25 feet. Most of the jerkbait fish came around cedar trees, and the A-rig fish came on main lake secondary points, but the fish seemed to be relating to the bottom. I had to have that A-rig bouncing off the bottom. So then I came down around Shell Knob area where the water was a lot more stained and caught some crankbait fish on a wigglewort and a spro rock crawler. And it really didn't seem to matter what color. If the water's stained up, you know, I'm using a dark red, something with some brown and green in it, and even, you know, mixing it up with a little chartreuse. But we had several keepers doing that, and we caught a few on a jig, also almost as far back as you could go in the creeks. And most of the crankbait and jig fish were from the bank out to about 6 to 8 foot. They were really shallow. So anyways, day of the tournament, I runs up the White River, like 15 degrees to take off. I run about an hour in 15-degree weather. It was pretty cold. We got up there, had it to ourselves, and never caught a fish till about 10 or 11. I think it was. Caught one at 9 o'clock and caught the second one about noontime. It was the only 2 fish. And when I went up there in practice, I never hit anything too hard. I'd catch a keeper, leave, go to a different area. But for some reason, them fish would not bite. We left that area at about 1 o'clock. Came back down to Shell Knob where I'd been catching some on a crankbait. Couldn't catch any there. With about an hour left, came back to Kimberling City. And we caught 4 on a wigglewort and a spro rock crawler, anywhere from 3 feet to 5 feet, pretty much right on the bank. And so I kind of messed up. I should have stayed in that area all day, but you know, I thought I'd go up to White. I didn't have any big fish up there in practice, but I thought I could catch, you know, 14 and a half, 15 and a half pounds. But anyways, the plan didn't work out. But the guys I've been talking to since I got home say the mid-lake section, you know, around Kimberling City, it's still got quite a bit of stain to it. And when the wind blows, they can catch them on a crankbait. Down in the clear water, you know, down by the dam, it's clearing up quite a bit. It's got 5-6 foot of visibility. And you're catching some on a jerkbait, some on an Alabama rig. You know, it's kind of a little bit of everything. Like I was saying, with the water temperature below 50 degrees, them fish aren't going to feed every day. But the key is, it seems like whenever you find one, you'll find 2 or 3 in the same area. Now, you know, a jig that a lot of guys are throwing is a, you know, 1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce jig. And what I'm be throwing is a Snowden. It's a pig sticker Snowden, 3/8 ounce. And I'll use several different trailers. This one here's got a baby Rage Craw for the trailer. I'll take a Zoom Speed Craw, take off about 1/2 inch and use it. And also what works good as a trailer is a Rage, it's a Strike King Menace. And this one I've got rigged up on just like a hard head, or this is called a pig rig. Pig Sticker makes it, but it's real similar to a Gene LaRue hard head, or biffle bug head. And it works real good this time of year, just crawling along the bottom. But a lot of times I'll use this as a trailer as well. I'll just take about 3/4 of an inch off of it. I like kind of a small profile jig this time of year. So I'll take that Menace and take about 3/4 of an inch off of it. And usually this time of year, I like something with the tails that are pretty subtle, almost like a beaver bait. Not a whole lot of action to it. But the jig fish have been in the same areas that you can catch a crankbait fish, real shallow, 6 to 8 foot, rock transitions. Especially, if the sun gets out, look for some of that darker black rock, because that'll heat up the fastest and, first. So, a couple degrees of water temperature is a big deal this time of year. You'll find later in the days, them fish will get up there in that warmer water and sun on them rocks. But, the bite's pretty typical for this time of year. We've had been a lot of fish shallow all winter long, and I think for the most part that's what's biting right now. Even the Alabama rig fish the guys have been catching, they've been setting the boats in 15 to 20 foot of water, fishing the A-rig, the same place you throw a crankbait. And I think a lot of those fish are the ones that have been up shallow for the most part all winter. Now what we should be starting to see here pretty quick, usually about the end of February, a lot of them fish that have been living out deep all winter will start getting up a little higher in the water column. And there still is a little bit of a deep bite on a drop shot and a spoon, but you're going to see that kind of dissipate in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But those fish out there should be starting to move up a little higher in the water column. Instead of being 40, 50 foot deep, you'll start seeing them at 20, 25, and they'll start moving more towards the main lake bluff ends, secondary points in the creek, suspending out there, trying to stage, getting ready to come in to spawn in the next month or so. But what you want to look for is areas where you think the fish are going to be spawning, just outside of these gravel pockets. Look for the nearest deep water, whether it's a main lake point or a secondary point. That's where a lot of these fish are going to start to stage. And depending on the water clarity, a bait that's going to come into play quite a bit is going to be a small swim bait, a little 4 or 5 inch grub, or a jerk bait depending on the water clarity, and still a crankbait and a jig as well. But whenever them fish start moving out of that deeper water and start suspending, there'll be a lot more numbers of them, and it'll be a little bit easier deal to pattern. Right now it seems like the fish are pretty hard to pattern. Where you catch them one day, you don't catch them the next. They may be on the same kind of rock, but you just got to search different areas and different creeks. So, looks like the weather's going to be pretty consistent for the next week or so. A lot of 50-degree days. Should start warming that water up. And fish are going to have one thing on their mind, and that's getting ready to spawn. So, and we're only 3-4 weeks away from having fish starting to move up on beds, weather providing. So the fishing action's going to get a lot more consistent in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.